What's a podcast actually worth listening to? My all-time favorite is the film reroll. They take the basic premise of a film and play through the story as an RPG, allowing the choices of the players and roll of the dice to drastically change the story. Highlights have included starting a civil war in Oz, blowing up the moon in E.T., and the GM tricking the players into thinking they were doing an obscure 80s teen sex comedy none of them had ever heard of, only to spring Jason on them and reveal it was really Friday the 13th, the final chapter. Here are a couple clips for a taste. The Cowardly Lion worries about what happened to Dorothy and Scarecrow when the party got split. Jafar fails a will roll and falls in love with Aladdin. They will sometimes do sequels to their previous rerolls and those can get epic. Their version of the Halloween trilogy is my personal canonical version of that franchise to me. Danny Hodges is the greatest ascended NPC protagonist the movies never had. Currently they're doing Rogue 2. In their version of Rogue One, Andor, JYN, and K2 so all survived, so now their continued story is running parallel to A New Hope. I could go on and on about the running jokes, the great humor, the unexpectedly dramatic moments with real pathos, the wonderful personalities and absolutely world-class acting and improv that goes into the show. I dearly love it and have listened to every episode at least twice, while some of my favorites have become go-to-comfort listening and I've lost count of how many times I've re-listened to those. But I'll let y'all discover all of that for yourselves. It's a true gem of a show. Some honorable mentions. Oh no. Ross and Carrie, they examine fringe science, spirituality, and claims of the paranormal and show up so you don't have to. They try alternative medicines on themselves, join cults, and investigate all kind of wild claims and report back their first-hand experience. Yes, they have done Scientology. You might be surprised at how far into it they got before they were found out. Monster Talk, a show that looks at Fortean phenomenon from a skeptical perspective. Never cynical or simply debunking, they engage with every topic like there could be some merit until they find that there isn't any. Good research and even worse puns. In research of, a sort of spin-off form Monster Talk, they watch every episode of the classic Leonard Nimoy series in search of and present some explanations that the producers chose not to present. One of the co-hosts is an archaeologist, and it can be a hoot to hear him go off on ancient alien and Graham Hancock type shit. Another path, a D&D 5e actual play podcast. They had a pretty epic campaign that I'd recommend for fans of the Adventure Zone. They recently started a new one with new characters that doesn't require listening to the old one, although the old one is well worth the time. Imprinted Echoes, a Numenera actual play podcast. Has some neat sci-fi concepts in it and I love the crew playing it. History of Rome. After the first few episodes where sound producing isn't great, it's just like 200 episodes of incredible story of the rise and fall of the entire Roman Empire. The dude knows his shit. Actively will call out his own mistakes during the following episodes when he is wrong, which isn't often. He tells it in way better than any textbook. He almost never goes off the rails and talks about irrelevant material. And when he does, it's about baseball for like 4 seconds. He enjoys the topic and you can tell. God, absolutely amazing podcast, but it's a big shame he wasn't in his groove yet in the first 10 episodes. I would have loved to hear the early/mythical history of Rome covered in the same depth and quality as the show got once it hit Augustus and later. History of Rome is very good. Revolutions is excellent. History of Byzantium by Robin Pearson tries to pick up where Mike Duncan's whore left off and does a nice job. And of course Hardcore History by Dan Carlin is fantastically entertaining and interesting as well. With the understanding the Mike Duncan approaches is more history teacher and Carlin is more pop history. Carlin does a good job, but he sidetracks into his own thoughts here and there. I'm still happy that he narrated The Storm Before the Storm and even had the whore intro music at the beginning of the recording. Revolutions, also by Mike Duncan, is excellent as well. Byzantine History podcast picks up right where Duncan left off and intentionally tries to mirror his style. Also very good. Fall of Civilizations has about 20 really well done several HRS docos that are awesome and also an ongoing podcast. My favorite ancient history channel by far. Well, there's your problem, a podcast about engineering disasters. With slides. I listen to one or two comedy podcasts, but none of them make me laugh as hard or as often as two civil engineers from Philly, proud sons of Philly, and a posh British woman discussing engineering and societal disasters. Edit, only Roz is a civil engineer, Liam is a finance major because he's a good boy. Great podcast. I went to school with Justin and he was always a very funny guy with his dry sense of humor. Heard from a mutual friend he had started podcasting and figured I'd give it a listen. Probably one of the most interesting and funny podcasts out there, and I don't even know much about engineering. A little surprised that this was the top of the thread, but I absolutely agree that it's a podcast worth listening to. I made a drinking bingo sheet a while back for anyone that wants to die of alcohol poisoning. Enjoy the show with a drink. I'll add that my personal favorite moment was Roz finding out live on air that RBG died during the 9/11 episode. Film reroll is my fucking jam. A while ago I made an episode guide for new listeners, in case anyone wants to know where to start. But really all episodes are great. The Hindenburg episode is still one of the funniest things I've listened to, from the Prussia bullying to the countless accounts of Zeppelins getting caught in a gale and losing all hands. Another great film reroll achievement, they successfully ran Memento, a movie where the protagonist Leonard has short-term memory loss and so it's told in reverse order so the audience doesn't know what events led up to each scene. They did so by having each session be one-on-one, with the GM and one single player as Leonard, but every time Leonard lost focus, that player's session ended and they would bring in a different player to play the next scene, so even they had no idea what had come before. And then, of course, the sessions aired in reverse order so the audience and the players were in the dark at any given moment. One notable highlight had Leonard finding the One Ring, or some universe-appropriate version of it, but nobody ever figured out what it did because nobody knew he had it. I'm very glad you posted the film reroll. It is legitimately the only actual play I enjoy. The chemistry between the players is so good. Film reroll is amazing. Personally, I loved their John Wick playthrough where everyone was one of the mob and John Wick was this bogeyman they just heard about via the GM. The John Wick episode is fucking amazing for the premise alone. They play as the villains, Wick is coming for them, and they have to survive. Oh my gods, thank you. I have been trying to remember the name of the film reroll for ages. Their Homeward Bound series had me in stitches. Oh no, Ross and Carrie is my comfort podcast. When I don't have anything specific that I want to listen to, I load up Ross and Carrie. They have a huge back catalog, and most of their episodes aren't related to current events, so you can listen to them anytime. I love their Bill and Ted reroll and re-listen to it periodically. r/film reroll